This is Mr. Rain going with Precalculus Chapter 2 test, versions Y and Z. Versions Y and Z were the makeup, and the test was out of 22. Question number 1. Sorry, I had to get my spray bottle. Use synthetic division to evaluate 3x to the fourth plus 2x squared minus 5x plus 1 when x is equal to 3. So to use synthetic division, I'm going to have to use a placeholder. It's missing a cubic. So that would be 3, 0, 2, negative 5, and 1. X is equal to 3 there. Again, if this was in the parentheses, it might look like something like this. X minus 3. Remember, x minus 3 in the parentheses are the same thing as x equals 3. This value is going to fall down, and then you multiply, add, multiply 3 times 9 is 27, add, multiply these two numbers, you get 87, add, you get 82. 3 times 82 gives us 246, and then you add those, and you get 247. So 247 is the remainder. That's answer D. Let me show you a different way. It's multiple choice, so if you're taking the final, it's multiple choice. You have a graphing calculator, okay? Although it tells you use synthetic division, you can also use the remainder theorem. Why would you want to do that? Well, it's telling you these are the remainders, right? And then you can just substitute in 3 to every time it says x. And lo and behold, that's a 3. Your calculator can just evaluate that very quickly. Okay? Question number 2. Which polynomial function graph below has 0 imaginary zeros? Imaginary means it doesn't touch the x-axis. For example, right here would be an imaginary because it's not touching the x-axis. So this is an idea called the fundamental theorem of algebra. So the degree of your polynomial tells you how many zeros there are. And the zeros are either real or they are imaginary. And remember, imaginary zeros come in pairs. Now, this function here is cubic. If you didn't recognize it, it's odd because you start down, ends up. And that means you have a degree 3. Well, if you notice where it crosses the x-axis, so any reals cross the x-axis, here it crosses the x-axis once, and it's a shoot-through. So if it's a shoot-through, that means its multiplicity is 1. Well, 1 plus something equals 3. Your answer is 2. There are 2 imaginaries on this one. So this one's saying I want 0 imaginary zeros. Let me show you guys another way of figuring out. Let's say you didn't know the type of degree. Well, we learned something called turning points. Turning points has a formula. Turning points is equal to n minus 1. You guys came up with that formula looking at a bunch of graphs, right? What is a turning point? A turning point is when it switches from either increasing to decreasing or decreasing to increasing. So just like a U-turn. So this one has 1, 2 turning points. Turning points equals n minus 1, and n represents the degrees. Well, if this has 2 turning points, if you add 1 to both sides, that means n is equal to 3. Your degree is equal to 3. Question B. So I'm going through each one. This is a 4th degree polynomial. How do I know that? It's starting up, ends up, so it has to be even. Again, you can use the turning points. Turning points equals n minus 1. It has 1, 2, 3 turning points. So it means the degree is 4. Well, this crosses the x-axis twice. Those are shoot-throughs. So those are my 2 reals, therefore there must be 2 imaginaries. That basically means on the imaginaries it must be an even number here, right? 0, 2, 4, 6, 8, because they're in pairs. Well, I'm looking for 0, and this one has 2, so that's not B or A. Let's look at question number, letter C. This is the same one. This is going to be a 4th degree polynomial, but notice how it doesn't cross the x-axis. That means it has 0 reals, and if it's a 4th degree polynomial, that means your imaginary is 4. Again, I'm looking one for it has 0. And the last one, this is a 5th degree polynomial. How do you know that? There's a couple of ways. You can count the number of turning points. 1, 2, 3, 4. So 4 turning points. Add 1, your degree is 5. A second way you can tell of this graph that it has a 5th degree polynomial and what type of degrees it is. If you look at my graph, this is a kiss or a bounce. So that means that's 2 reals. Shoots through, that's 3. Shoots through, that's 4. Shoots through, that's 5. So this one has 5 reals, 0 imaginaries. That's the answer, that it is D. So basically what I did is I just had the same version, same exact question as the different version. I just changed what I'm asking of you. Question number 3. For your response, make sure to show all your work, box your answers. In question number 3, it says factor completely. You have a trinomial. Half of 5 is 2.5, which means on this problem you can't use X box. Okay? Now, what I do recognize is that each of these has an X. So my greatest common factor is X. So you're left with x to the 4th minus 6x squared plus 9. Remember, you can always distribute to get back to the original. If you just got the greatest common factor, I gave you guys 2 points. See? Right there. Okay, now you're left with x times the quantity, x times x to the 4th minus 6x squared plus 9. So the question is, how would you factor this one in pink? Well, what's half of 4? It's 2. When you have that, you can use Xbox or substitution. So let me show you the 2 methods. Here is substitution, and let me show you also Xbox. Let's do substitution first. In pink, x to the 4th is x squared squared. And negative 6x squared is negative 6x squared. And the reason why I'm doing that is kind of like a, in parentheses, I want to have x squared. So basically, every time I see x squared, I can write w. So I do a substitution. So I now have w squared minus 6w plus 9. This is a trinomial. Half of 2 is 1. I can use my coefficients. A times c is 9. B value is negative 6. These 2 multiply to be 9. These same 2 add to be negative 6. So those become x minus 3 and x minus 3. And because you have the same 2, we're eventually going to write them together, but I'm going to do my substitution here. W is equal to x squared. W is equal to x squared. Therefore, I have x squared minus 3 times x squared minus 3. And because I have 2 identical ones, I can just do that with the multiplicity of 2 and don't get my greatest common factor. This is your answer. Let me show you this problem in a different way by using Xbox. So in pink, here's my x and here's my box. A times c is 9. My b value is negative 6. So my values are going to be 3 and negative 3. Now, pay attention. These values right here are splitting the middle one. So you're splitting 3. That should be a negative 3. You are splitting negative 3x squared and negative 3x squared. Because if you add those 2 together, you get negative 6x squared. And then you write your first term, which is x to the 4th. And then your last term, which is positive 9. And then basically what we're doing here is we're just looking for the greatest common factor. Greatest common factor in this column is x squared. Greatest common factor in this direction is x squared. In this direction, it'll be a negative 3. I know that too because if I multiply negative 3 times x squared, it gives you negative 3x squared. And over here, it would also be a negative 3. Multiplies, multiplies. And then my answer would be x squared minus 3 times x squared minus 3, but I have 2 of those, so I write with the power of 2. Now, you could have used, also if you were stuck here, you could have also used the rational roots theorem to find one of the factors. You would have found that it would have been pretty difficult. Yeah, but you could have found one. I gave you 3 points if you solved it. So this problem says factor, which means you have your parentheses. You don't have x equals. And if it did say something like find the zeros or solve it, that means you're getting x equals. If you did that on this problem, I gave you partial credit, 3 out of 4. Those who asked for about the extra credit, the PBIS acronym is RAISE, and the letter I is integrity. That side was out of 10 points. 2 for the name, 2 for the multiple choice, 6, and then that problem's 4, so 6 plus 4 is 10. 10 points on that side. Back side. Write a polynomial function of minimum degree, so I don't tell you what degree, in standard form with real coefficients whose zeros are 1. Okay, let's think about this. This is a real. The reason why it is a real is because there's no I in it, so there's one of those. And then this is an imaginary, and imaginaries come in pairs. So there has to be another one. So 1 plus 2 is 3. That means my final answer is going to have a degree of 3. Well, what do you do with this 1? That's x minus 1. Remember, it's x equals 1, and then you're setting it equal to 0. So you would subtract 1 from both sides. This is negative 2i. Remember, you can think of it as negative 0 minus 2i, and then its conjugate is 0 plus 2i. So negative 2i and positive 2i. That gives you x minus 1, x plus 2i, and x minus 2i. Now, a property of multiplication says you can change the order in which you multiply them. What does that mean? I decided to multiply these two first in blue. If you chose to multiply these two first, it's not wrong. It's just your work will look different than mine, but we should have the same answer at the end. X plus 2i times x minus 2i, x squared, 2xi, negative 2xi, and negative 4i squared. These are opposites. Those will cancel. And you're left with negative 4i squared, and then I squared is equal to negative 1. So negative 4 times negative 1 is positive 4. X squared plus 4 is your answer for the blue one. Now we're going to multiply the orange times the blue. X squared plus 4 times x minus 1, x cubed, 4x, negative x squared, negative 4. You'll notice that there are no like terms in this box. Therefore, your answer is going to be x cubed minus x squared plus 4x minus 4. If you got all of these numbers correct, but your signs were wrong, I gave you 3 points. If you have all of the binomials correct and the rest of the problem wrong, so here's the binomials, you would get 2 points. Or if you did x minus 1 and x plus 2i, if you just had those two, I give you 2 points. CM, a common mistake was to think that the first binomial is 1 minus 2i. That's incorrect because it says the word and. Another mistake is students were thinking that this was like a 1 or this was an I. So just notice the difference between a 1 and an I. Question number 6. I believe I got this question directly from last year's test, in which I just copied and pasted, which means I gave you the solutions. You already had the problem. Question number 6. Convert the polynomial into vertex form. Graph in vertex form. Well, what is vertex form? Vertex form is y equals a times x minus h squared plus k. If you have that and the rest of it's wrong, you got 2 points. What do? I move the negative 20 to the right side. When I say the right side, it does not mean across the equal sign. My b value then is 8. Half of 8 is 4. 4 squared is 16. If I add 16 to the equation, I shouldn't use yellow, let's use purple. That means I need to have the opposite of positive 16, which is negative 16, because these two will need to equal 0. When you factor this, you'll get x plus 4 times x plus 4, and you put those together, you get x plus 4 squared minus 36. Notice here you have a positive 4, so you split to x minus negative 4. Why? Because if you put it right above the formula, you must have a minus sign. So your h value is negative 4, your k value is negative 36. A value is 1, your graph opens up. Negative 4, negative 36, left 4, down negative 36, quadrant 3. And you didn't need to note that, but it does cross the y-axis at negative 20. In this problem, it's not asking you to find the x and y intercepts. Another common mistake was students were trying to find the vertex from the standard form, x equals negative b over 2a, and substituting it back in. But that doesn't give you vertex form. You could have gone that order pair through that, but not the correct or way I was asking you for. And the last question, make sure to label all your intercepts. I got this question directly from last year's test, and I just changed like a couple of things. X squared, you can write that as x minus 0 squared, x plus 3 squared. If you use the zero product rule, x squared equals 0, take the square root, x is plus or minus 0, but 0 cannot be both positive and negative, therefore my answer is x equals 0. Its multiplicity is a 2, which is an even. Anytime it's an even number, you kiss or bounce. Set that one equal to 0. You get x equals negative 3 and x equals negative 3. Essentially what that means is that you have a degree of 2. That's also a kiss. Your basic graph is you just add the exponents. So you have x to the 4th, which is even. If it's even, it's going to start up, end up. That's called leading coefficient. So my leading coefficient's there. Then I know on my graph this is negative 3. As I approach it, I'm going to bounce off of it, so don't go through the x-axis. And then at 0, I'm going to bounce off and finish there. If you got a correct graph, 4 points. 3 points if you didn't show me enough work and I asked you for that. 2 points if you knew at least that it was pointing up and ends up with the leading coefficient, or if you made a bounce at one of those x-intercepts. That side was 12 points. 12 plus 10 is out of 22. Good luck, study.